So it's not what happens to us, it's how you respond, Mr. Ziglar said. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. The problem and the solution is found in how we respond, how we look at the problem, how we understand and see the solution. Mr. Ziglar said you have to respond rather than react. In early 2008, Mr. Zig Ziglar, world famous Zig Ziglar, was paid $100,000 per speech. He got older and he didn't want to travel as much. So they raised the fee from $50,000 to $100,000, assuming that he would get less bookings. Guess what? He got more. His book, See at the Top, sold over 1 million copies, maybe more than that now, I don't know. But here he is at the top of his game. He was way over the top. And one night, he had an idea. And Mr. Ziglar, when he, just like Santiago said, and Santi did such a good job in getting you guys engaged this morning, give him and the rest of my team a big hand clap. I'm just so grateful for my team. But Santiago said something. He said, you know, when you have an idea, then you write it down. And that was Mr. Ziglar's habit, that when he had an idea, even if it was in the middle of the night, he would write it down. And normally he would have a pen, a piece, and some paper like next to his bedside or in his pajamas or whatever, and he wouldn't have to get out of bed. But he didn't want to wake the redhead up, so he walked out of the bedroom to go across to his office, and he made one slight misstep and fell down the stairs, tumbled down the stairs, and crashed his head on the marble floor. But guess what? Instead of reacting, he responded. It affected his short-term memory to the point where he couldn't remember what he said 5 minutes ago, but he could remember his whole life. He remembered every quote. He remembered every story. He remembered people that he met. He remembered everything except for what happened in the last 5 minutes. So he would tend to repeat himself. And there were some that said, you know, we should get him off the stage. We should not let him go out like this. But instead of doing that, the team got together and started doing some phenomenal thinking. And he would go out with either Julie or Tom, and they would do an interview style where they would sit down and interview him. And if he got stuck on a loop, like I met Zig the first time in March of 2008. Shortly after that happened, I didn't know that that had happened. I called on Ziglar. I met Tom. I learned what happened to him, brought him down to our conference. I did a video with him and Tom in March of 2008, and then I brought him down to our conference later on, November of 2008. And he would get stuck on a loop. And that day he got stuck on, he had this idea of his book, The Home Court Advantage. He was thinking about a book called The Home Court Advantage. He said, you know, when everything's better at home, everything's going to be better out there. I call it the home court advantage. You need to court your spouse. And he, after about the 6th time that he said it, well, and of course, Julie would remind him, said, Dad, you already shared that with us. And he had enough wit to say, yeah, but those 2 guys on the front row, they weren't listening. It was so awesome. But about after the sixth time that he said it, a brand new attendee, first time at one of our conferences, pops up, walks out the room. And I thought, that's it. This guy came to see the world famous Mr. Zig Ziglar and jumping around on the stage and kneeling and pointing. And that's not what he got. So I peeked out the door and the guy was on the cell phone. I said, I'm sure he's changing his airline reservations. He's about to head home. So as he was coming back in the room, I said, is everything okay? He said, yeah, Zig got to me. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, about the sixth time he said something about the home court advantage, it got to me. He said, you see, my girlfriend has been wanting to get married for the last 4 years, and I wouldn't ask her to marry me. He got to me, so I just went and called her. I was like, you proposed over the phone? The great news is that they ended up, get this, they ended up not only getting married, but we had an inner circle trip to Costa Rica, and their big dream was to go deep sea fishing in Costa Rica. He asked if he could get married in Costa Rica on that trip. I said, I know people in Costa Rica, but I don't know about doing that. I said, why don't you get married in Houston? I can get you a pastor. And he got married at our seminar. I was the best man. We went to Costa Rica, went deep sea fishing with a small group of people. It was phenomenal. And when we were down there, he showed me a letter that Mr. Ziglar, I'm sure Lori had made, and had Mr. Ziglar sign it. And he had it framed. He brought it with him on his honeymoon. They had learned about what had happened and sent him courtship after marriage, and he had this framed letter. So he and Julie wrote this book called Embrace the Struggle. And what I want to encourage you today is embrace the struggle. You see, because the point of this book is that in the struggle, there is life.